That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about a seminal piece of queer film, Paris is Burning, which will be released into the Criterion Collection on February 25th, 2020.
Paris, there's so much to say.
Well, okay, let's logistics or
we should start by saying this is like, I think, the best documentary ever.
It's certainly
for like a brown queer person.
It's certainly probably the most important and entertaining queer LGBTQ plus documentary that ever put to celluloid. I'd agree with that. It was directed by Jennie Livingston. In 1990, it premiered at the New York LGBT Film Festival, and thereafter went to Sundance, Berlin, won the Teddy in Berlin. The 1991 Sundance Film Festival was the birthplace of what what critic B. Ruby Rich came to coin the new queer cinema movement, because there were a ton of examples of queer characters in these new independent films, plus Derek Jarman, that really revolutionized how we move forward with gay characterizations throughout the 1990s. It didn't go on to win or be nominated for an Oscar or anything, but it definitely is a landmark piece of cinema that took a long time, I believe, to grow into what it is today. But immediately, I mean, we've shown this film to tons of people. It's this in the room, I think, are ones in this house at least, are films we've watched over and over again. But its influence is unmistakable now, because now, you know, this is like the 8th or 9th time I've seen Paris is Burning.
Well, let's describe what it is.
But looking back on it, what the imprint it has on things like Pose and RuPaul's Drag Race.
Sure, we'll talk about that, but
Okay.
well, for people who don't know what it is, it's a documentary that chronicles a period in the late 80s.
1987 through 88.
Of the New York ball scene.
Yes.
And balls are like parties, competitions, where queer people perform, basically. Whether it's dancing, posing, modeling.
Throughout various categories. There are specific categories that people compete for, and the winner takes home a trophy. That's very competitive.
The idea is that these people who usually are disenfranchised kind of like live out their fantasies. So a lot of the categories represent things that, you know, they feel they could never achieve in real life, but in this world, they can be those things. They can be executives, they can be stars, they use the term realness to say, you know, like for the trans individuals feeling like they're a real woman or a real man. So it's just a magical place.
It is a transformative experience watching the documentary. Because as we were watching it this time, I was thinking back, the first time I was introduced to it was in a course on new queer cinema when I was in college as an undergrad, and there were only 2 gay people in the class. I was one of them. They were all white, and just the reactions people were having, like, it is transformative.
The format of the documentary is following several key players who sort of represent their own houses. The houses are the groups, like sort of like made families,
right?
That all compete against each other. I don't feel like we need to sort of define what ball.
Well, no, especially
is, but
if you've been exposed to Pose at all, this all probably seems like old hat already.
Right. So I don't know what to say, because all I want to do is just gush about it. I do think it's important to mention a few key, like all the key people.
Sure.
So starting with
LaBeija
from the House of LaBeija.
Dorian Corey.
Well, okay.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, they're all just so like, I don't know.
What?
I just feel overwhelmed because there's so much amazing.
Well, why don't you talk about your favorites?
Well, LaBeija, who really feels like the most, LaBeija is a house mother, so it's her job to sort of take care of all the children in her house, and she seems like the most warm, the most informed, the most generous,
very wise, very articulate.
Wise. And it's just so amazing to see this person who, we don't get a lot of background on her life, but it just seems so rich and textured, and her willingness to share it with everyone is really beautiful. Dorian Corey.
I like Dorian Corey.
Dorian Corey is an older queen. She's featured in the documentary The Queen.
Yes. From 1968,
Yeah.
which we saw for the first time this past
She's
summer.
an old queen. She's more of a showgirl. It's very like Sunset Boulevard. Like all of her shots are very close up while she's doing her makeup.
Yes, in her heyday, she did Dietrich and Lena Horne. Yeah.
The sort of legend of Dorian Corey extends beyond the documentary.
Yeah.
Come to find out that
when she died.
when she died and her apartment was evacuated, a dead body was found in her closet.
in a trunk.
In a trunk.
Which an episode of Dominique Jackson's character Elektra in Pose, that is an episode of that series.
Yeah.
In fact, watching it this time now after.
Well, let's get through it and then we'll talk about the influence on Pose and
Okay.
RuPaul's Drag. Well, because it's just okay. And then who else? Venus
Extravaganza.
Who's a young trans woman who, to spoil it, ends up being murdered during the filming of the documentary as a victim of violence because she was a sex worker.
Willi Ninja.
Willi Ninja, who was considered like the predominant sort of like
Inspiration.
authority on voguing.
The inspiration for the music video, Vogue.
Yeah.
Freddie Pendavis, Sal Pendavis.
That little group, which, you know, it's two younger, I would call them boys because they seem very young. And just, they're so fresh and supportive and fun, which is a nice contrast to to some of the reality in New York City during the 80s, which we can talk about later. But those two individuals are really inspiring. Who else?
Angie Xtravaganza.
Another house mother.
Octavia St. Laurent.
She, I think, she really resonated with me. This idea of like her wanting to be more than what she is and seeing herself beyond like her actual position in life. A beautiful woman who could have easily been a model, but because she was trans, I'm sure there were many roadblocks put up in front of her because she never was a successful model. But yeah, these people are so inspiring. The film is short. The documentary is only 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be long enough for me, just witnessing these characters and their joy for life and their creativity, their ambition. It makes me wish that I could have been, I mean, I was alive and I was an adolescent during that time, but you know, to experience it and to be part of that culture, it just is so amazing. I think, you know, I was 12 when the documentary came out. And I think had I seen this when I was 12, it would have, I mean, the influence it would have had on me would have been enormous in a very positive way. Because I didn't watch it until I was about 29. And even then it blew my mind. So I can only imagine what it would have been like to see characters like Freddie Pendavis. Like I really saw myself in him. So seeing him create this world for himself would have been so inspirational. And I'm sure there are so many, you know, LGBTQ plus people who have watched this documentary and felt the same way.
Well, it's 30-year anniversary this year, and it's amazing that there really is still such an absence of the representation. Pose can't just be it.
Well, I want to talk about, so I don't want to talk much more, you can, but I just want to say I think this film is for everyone, particularly these, you know, white girls who think they're copying gay white men, who think they're copying black women, who really, they're all just appropriating the culture of queer people of color. And this shit is not new. It's old.
No, it's
watching Paris is Burning. If you're a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, you need to see this. All these, you know, like adolescent white kids from the Midwest who'd love to say, yes, queen, drag her, no tea, no shade. All these phrases come from this world.
What's what RuPaul would say to Santino all the time? Roll the dice and
shake the rice and roll the dice or whatever.
Yeah, like, all that's in here.
And then, you know, really tough. So then first RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, everything RuPaul says is sort of
picked from somewhere.
Somewhere, but much of it is picked from Paris is Burning. I mean, every line from that documentary, I think I've heard RuPaul say on the show. In Star Booty, she quotes Venus Extravaganza.
Touch all this game.
Yeah, such a huge influence. Pose on FX, the Ryan Murphy show, is Paris is Burning.
Well, I think that's what I was trying to say earlier.
Right, but I think so now you need to fully explain.
That you can tell, looking back after watching both seasons of Pose, like where they pick their inspirations for the characters on Pose. Like Octavia St. Laurent is India's character. I'm forgetting her name on the show. Angel. And Angie Xtravaganza would be willing to bet is Blanca, MJ Rodriguez's character.
Yeah, I mean it couldn't be more obvious.
Yeah.
When I love Pose, can't wait for the next season to come out.
But you can also see how Billy Porter transforms as the MC.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. So the Criterion release includes a lot of bonus features.
Yes. All of which are worth watching. Actually.
Yes. So there's something called outtakes, which totals like 100 minutes.
It's near. I thought it was nearly 2 hours.
Yeah. So the outtakes are longer than the film, but they're set up in the same format. It's just like categories of topics, and we watched all of them. They were equally as powerful. I really want to applaud the filmmaker, Jennie Livingston, because she made a conscious effort to paint these people and their lives in a way that was respectful, empowering, inspirational, because there's a lot of negativity and sadness during that period in that area
and
of the world.
personally for most of them.
And all of them. And instead of making it seem like they were these, like just the dregs who had made themselves sick and were all trash, I mean, it could easily have turned into that. She's also a queer person, so I would have expected her to handle it with a delicacy and a care, the care she did. But watching the outtakes and seeing sort of another side of the reality to that life, it really does make it clear that she made a very conscious decision to tell a very specific story. And there's another special feature where she does like a round table talk with a couple of...
With Freddie and Saul.
And another filmmaker whose name I just forgot.
Thomas Allen Harris.
And she talks about the editing process. Yeah, she talks about how she had countless hours of footage, and it was an arduous process editing.
And she didn't want it. She credited her editor with.
And she says if it would have been a different editor, she would have had something different for breakfast. If the weather would have been different. Who knows how this film would have turned out? But I think, maybe she's downplaying the effort that was put into really creating a beautiful story.
Well, because as a documentarian too, like it's the subject that's powerful. Like she's molded it the way that she wanted to, but
yes, because
I think that's appropriate for her to say that.
Because all of the people we mentioned initially as like the key players, they're all entertainers.
Yeah,
these are unpolished, except for maybe Dorian Corey, who had been entertaining for a long time. These are people who have never had an official platform, and they are true entertainers. Had they been given an opportunity, they would have stole the world. So it didn't, while I give her credit, it's also the subject, like you said. Anyone could have pointed a camera and turned on a microphone in front of these people.
It took someone being interested and curious and respectful.
To tell this story.
To be, because she kind of had to be invited into that community too.
Yes.
But
another special feature on the Criterion release is an episode of the Joan Rivers Show.
Oh yeah.
From 1991.
Which is a little uncomfortable to watch, but
where she
bless Joan.
Yeah, where she interviews some of the key players and the filmmaker, and there are a lot of faux pas by 2020 standards.
Sure.
But the beauty of Joan Rivers was she was crass, but she was also accepting, and I think that's why many considered her to be a queer icon, even though she was a Republican, and was on Celebrity Apprentice with Trump.
Yes.
But
yeah, she also gave them a platform.
She gave them a platform.
And treated them respectfully, even though they
really
were faux
did,
pas.
in her way.
In her way,
yeah. I don't know what else to say except everyone needs to watch this film. I don't know how anyone who hasn't seen it could watch it and not be inspired and feel moved to want to, be their authentic selves. And
it's entertaining.
And it's entertaining. It's funny.
Like the film, Jennie Livingston even has, she knows what shade is, but because she has like Pepper LaBeija talking about how my house is the only house, and then you have Freddie Pendavis in the next scene be like, nobody wants to be in that house.
Yeah, I mean,
she highlights like the gentle kind of ribbing that goes.
It's entertaining. It's riveting.
It is riveting. It is.
Yeah, it's sad, but the overall message I think is very inspiring. So yeah, I think this is a masterpiece. This is requisite viewing. I would give this documentary 5 out of 5 stars.
I would give this 5 out of 5 as well. And Criterion's, having watched the same film for years, it was really a treat to see all the outtakes because,
Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah, this disc is worth purchasing just for the outtakes.
And then it just makes you delve into every time you watch something, you see new things, and then we had a conversation about how why isn't it longer? But she had to get the rights to this music, which cost more than or almost as much as this 6 years worth of effort that everybody involved put into it anyway. And I don't know, it's just. And for Criterion, who has, kind of considering their library a limited number of queer talent on them, I think this is a seminal piece. This is a legitimizing move by them for, one of the best documentaries ever made. So,
is that all?
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Bye.